Hey there, you got Doug Gore with the Spray Wash Academy, and today we're going to be talking with Superior SoftWash Systems guy Brandon. I'm going to say Sersch, and maybe I got that completely wrong, butchered it. I don't know yet. Brandon, tell me first of all, how do you say your last name, and tell me a little bit about yourself.
You got it correct. It's Sersch. A little bit about myself. I have been doing cleaning for roughly 12 years now. Uh, this is my second and a half, 2.5 years now in the drone, uh, drone cleaning side. I have a little bit more time in the drone ag industry, dabbling in that.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, I've been flying drones as long as, probably 6 years now.
Yeah.
So,
So
aside
go ahead.
aside from that, I have a pretty good background with aviation, private piloting, skydiving, paragliding, things like that. So
All the
there's a
fun stuff.
lot. Yeah, there's a lot that a lot of streams cross, a lot of the paths cross with all of that stuff. So hopefully we can touch base on a lot of those things and uh, inform people what to watch out for.
So before we started this interview, and I want to be clear with everybody, kind of the direction that we're going to end up going here today, I think, because as Brandon and I started this, before we started this, I guess, a little pre-show talk, a lot of the bad sides of the drone industry is, I guess, how we're going to approach that. Not necessarily the bad side, drama side, that kind of thing, but about the safety aspects and things that you may or may not be thinking of as you get into the drone world. So we kind of want to bring some of that stuff to light to you, and that's going to be kind of the direction that we're going. So first of all, what drone do you own, Brandon?
I have a Lucid C1 and an Apelix B1.
Mhm. So which one was the first one you had? I'm going to assume that you got the Lucid first and then got the C1.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. I got the Lucid first. I ordered up the Apelix this year. Got some time flying with that on a recent big project. So, kind of learning the nuances between each drone.
Mhm.
That was it was an experience just to see the difference in the drones capabilities.
Mhm.
So the technology is advancing very fast.
Very
So
rapidly, I'm seeing that. So when you very first started looking at drones, and I'm going to make some assumptions here, and then you can correct me if I'm wrong. But like when you bought the Lucid, for example, you bought that, like you said, about what 2 years ago, somewhere around there.
yeah,
And then was that the only drone that you knew of, or did you know about the Apelix or the Aqualine at the time, or is that the only one you knew of?
I knew about the Apelix, not the Apelix. I'm sorry. I didn't hear about the Apelix until later. I
Mhm.
knew about the Aqualine. Um, I knew they were in development. Lucid was in development of the Sherpa at the time.
Mhm.
Uh, I had looked at a couple other drones that
Mhm.
I had came across, but nothing really caught my attention. My attention was focused on the safety aspect and things like that.
Exactly.
So
Mhm. Good. So, what do you think in what you're seeing out there right now, and as this thing is kind of twirling around and taking flight, if you would, what is the biggest thing you see people are missing when they're looking at the drone side of it, or what they're maybe not thinking about now that you've got 2 years of drone flying, pressure washing under your belt?
one of the big things is the safety factor. Uh, when I consider a project, I really have to consider about the things I consider is where it's taking place. With the advent of drone cleaning and where we're at now in the industry, we are now crossing these streams of drones into other industries, but the cleaning one really brought the drones into urban environments.
Hmm.
Uh, I've done a lot of work down in bigger cities, and I've learned very quickly from my very first job in a major city that they needed to have the sidewalks blocked off, the sometimes having the streets blocked off, things like that. Um, these are all for good reasons,
Right,
of
right.
course. But these are the things that people don't understand when they're getting into this industry. The amount of actual work that goes into prepping these jobs for a project. I think there's a shortcoming in project prep, things like that. And safety is one of my biggest concerns. Even with the ag industry, I've been doing some webinars with the ag industry lately, and it's what I compare it to, or what I'll call the wild, wild west.
Exactly.
There's a lot of people. The FAA has made it very easy to get a Part 107,
Mm-hmm.
and technology has advanced to the point where the FAA is not regulating it the way it should be regulated, and it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, and that's kind of a hard thing because sometimes we want the government involved, but we don't want the government involved, that kind of a thing, because typically they tend to go overboard
They
or
do.
underboard, depending on how you look at the situation. So
Yeah, they've had to make some adjustments pertaining to like the Part 137, things like that. But man, I tell you, the one of the big things is the people within the FAA don't have a good understanding of what we do, and I really don't think they have a good understanding of the issues that we have as drone operators.
well, that's actually going to be an argument that I know the drone manufacturers don't like me saying that they don't know our industry. I've caught that flack back already, but here's the reality of it: that they are drone manufacturers and they are manufacturing something for our industry, but they don't know the little nuances of our industry. Same thing with, we don't know the nuances of the drone builds and those sorts of things. And it'd be the same thing with what you're saying there with the FAA. The FAA knows the drone world, or the airspace world, and these sorts of things, but they don't know the nuances of what it is we do or why that we do what we do. And to your point with the setting up side of it that people aren't thinking about, that takes me right back to the whole thing where when you look at doing a building cleaning, and the typical way that we do that is going to be with a lift most of the times, lift or a crane or something to that nature to get us up there, or to drop, to make drops. So in all of that, there's preparations that need to be done to make sure. And I'm just going to say the lift side of it, you're going to make sure that your area is cordoned off so that cars can't go through where your lift is moving at, and all. It's the same thing. There's preparation that needs to be done. You don't just pull up to the site, pop it out of the box and start flying, kind of a thing.
Yeah, correct. That is a concern too of mine, is people not understanding how much space they have to block off for some of that stuff.
And is that because, I don't mean to interrupt you, I'll do that probably quite a bit, but is that because the drone moves so quickly from side to side, would you say?
Um, yeah, I mean the possibilities, the potential hazards. Let's put it this way: being in the drone industry, it's not a matter of if it's going to crash; it's a matter of when.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not at all taking a shot at manufacturers at all. It's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is not brought to enough of a forefront for the new people getting into the industry. They're not realizing that they're going to crash. It's going to happen.
I'm not going to mention his name, though he put it out himself, right? But nonetheless, I'm not going to go there. But there's a drone pilot right now that very, very experienced. He's got about 2 years under his belt as well, and he just crashed his drone recently, and it was very adamant that it was my fault, not the drone's fault, and that it was just one of those things that happened. Right? Again, he's got experience. I think he was in a little bit of a high EMI, electromagnetic interference area, and all of that. But that's not what caused the crash. It was basically a slip of the foot kind of a thing. And so, because you have to be aware of your surroundings and what's going on, and, making sure of things. And that's why I think it's also important to cordon off an area to say, this is my area, this is my space. And I should be able to walk back and forth freely, because people are thinking, well, you got to look where you're going. Yeah, but you also have a drone that you're flying, so you're looking up. They do have altitude holds and all these kinds of things, so you can set the controller down and it'll just sit there. But nonetheless, you have to be able to pay attention to all those different areas and things that are going on.
Correct. Yeah. At the end of the day, if something happens, it is the pilot in command that is going to be liable for, they're the ones that are responsible for any of the issues that arise, any injuries, any damage, things of that nature. So that's something that needs to be taken into consideration in all projects. And another thing that I don't think is really discussed enough is this industry is rather new. So the drone pilot's got to be willing to tell a customer, no, we can't do it.
Right.
There's too many people out there saying, hey, we can do this and this and this with a drone. And for my own personal experiences, I've gotten contacted by a couple of government offices because they had hired somebody to do a project. And they said, hey, they could do it with a drone, and they couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to elaborate with them that, they should have never even taken that project on or said that they could do that, because that's just not a feasible, it's not feasible.
So what would be one of those things that you would say is something that really isn't feasible, that somebody would look at and think is, but really isn't?
Elevation is always a big issue. There are ways to get around some of it if you have planned the job properly. You could work around elevation. I've done that in the past, where I have gone up over the limitation of our weight restriction for the altitude, but I did not ever actually go over, because I've done some little bit more risky maneuvers, but they were also taken into we also took into consideration how much risk there was involved with that one. We had a large, wide open area, things like that. So we suspended the hose on a piece of equipment to get the drone to where we needed to get it.
Right.
But we had skilled pilots that have done multiple large scale projects. And quite honestly, something like that, you have to understand what you're working with. So
go ahead.
So when it comes to a project that I wouldn't take on, I did have a customer that wanted us to clean the windows on a 300-foot building. The max was 300 feet on the building, but the windows were not anywhere near that. And we just could not we couldn't safely do the window cleaning on that project at the location. There was a lot of construction going on, things of that nature. They had rigging hanging off the side of the building for the construction workers and things of that nature. And they wanted us to clean right next to them. And I just told them, I got it. That's not safe. We're just not going to do it. So
going down that line. So since we've opened that door, let's explore it a little bit. So, first of all, going with the height, okay? Forgetting everything else, right? Let's not say that there's anybody around. We're out in the middle of nowhere. We've got good satellite connection. Everything is great. Every single thing is perfect. It's ideal. It's everything. what would you say? I'm not going that high, even if you are suspending your hose, you're never going over 50 pounds, even though 50, anything under 55. So if you could say that the conditions are ideal for me to fly to this building that's 700 feet tall, where would you say is the cutoff in what you should do?
It really comes down to the weight. I actually have I have actually marked my hoses and calculated the weight of each mark on my hose, how much weight I'm going to have there. So I kind of have a good idea of where I'm at. And it depends on the drone, and it depends on which hose I'm using as well. But if everything is perfect, I'll say this: I've done windows at the max altitude was about 190 feet is where I did them.
Well, I guess I bring this up for a couple of different points, right? Like you said, to me, there's a way that you could go beyond, right? Because it's that 55 limit. But if you lift your hose up with you, you're never exceeding that weight limit. But let's say you get up to, and I'm just going to throw out a ridiculous figure. Let's say I'm at 1,000 feet with my drone. Okay, I can't see up there. I can't see what I'm doing. You see what I mean? So at what point, if I'm at 200 feet, can I really see what I'm doing? So a lot of the focus is on how high can these drones go. And, I had a conversation with one of the manufacturers, and they said, well, I can take that drone to 10,000 feet if that's what I want to do. Not tethered, obviously, and all that kind of thing. It'll go that high, but you're never going to, so for me, most of the conversations come down to, well, how high can this drone go? Okay, that to me isn't a good question, because it doesn't matter if it can go that high. It's how high should you safely go, and where's your vision at? I'm getting old; my vision's not there. So, what's your viewpoint on that?
Well, that you bring up a very good point with that visual line of sight. When nobody knows what everybody's vision is capable of, correct? But there's minimum vision requirements for becoming a private pilot. So you have to be able to have a minimum visual. As of right now,
become a drone pilot.
But not to become a drone pilot, correct? With the industry being so new, these are all things that are most likely going to come into play at some point in the future. And I hope it doesn't take a catastrophic failure or an injury or damage, anything like that, for it to happen. I just want people to understand what they're really getting into. You spoke of a pilot having that issue with the crash. I had one very similar to that situation, and it was a battery failure. I was cleaning windows on a facility here in my hometown, and I got up to altitude. I started cleaning the windows, things like that. Everything was going good. And all of a sudden the controller started beeping at me. I looked down at it and there's no battery. And it was a matter of about 2 seconds, and the drone had started falling out of the sky and landed 3 feet away from me. So I've had my share of incidents with this. I kept myself in a safe distance, but nobody understands how quickly it happens. The drone, even, tethered, things like that, it was only 4 stories off the ground. So I had plenty, I had good visual line of sight. Could you imagine, take for instance, it being at 200 feet in the air? You might have a little bit more time to get out of the way, but you really don't know what's going to happen at that altitude. Correct.
At least at 4 stories, let's say, I can position myself away from that thing a little bit. You know what I mean? But when it's 200 feet in the air, where is it really at in relationship to you? And, is that hose going to snag on something and make it go over this direction a little bit, or what's going to happen? Is it just, and let's look at it this way. I mean, if you're sitting there and you're flying and you've got let's say it's the Lucid. That Lucid has 6 arms and motors. So what if only one motor just happens to go out? Is that gonna tilt? So now you're let's say you're flying an Aqualine and one arm has a failure for some reason, right? That it comes disconnected for some reason. That thing isn't going to fall straight down. That thing is going to tilt and twist based on the rotation of the other rotors that are on, and then it's going to fall. And if it's still under power, it could go wherever it wants to go.
Correct. That's one of the other things too that I had discussed with in our egg drone side, and we've discussed the training side of that. Mm-hmm. You can't train with a book or with instructions, right, with what you're going to experience in the real world. I think the training modules need to include some sort of failure such as that, so that you learn you got to learn. You have to experience to learn from it, and to experience the motor failure and see how it handles things like that, and then learn how to get it under control. Things to do.
That would be something that you can't teach on, right? Because you can't. Correct. You couldn't take and say you have 3 students, and I'm just going to throw out numbers, and let's just say it's $35,000 per drone, and you got to crash 3 different drones. It's not going to, there's no way to do that. I don't know if the simulators could somehow simulate that. That would be a good thing to do. But like the Spray Wash Academy will end up doing a lot of these drone trainings and things of that nature. And one of the things that we looked at with all of this is, I think that there needs to be, and I'd love to have your feedback on, drone flight times. Like, in order to pass, if you would, a minimum number of takeoffs, a minimum number of landings, a minimum number of flight hours, because if you go someplace and you get that flight time and it turns out to be that, whole 15 minutes or whatever it is, or maybe it's an hour, that's really, to me, in looking and thinking and talking and all that kind of stuff, it's going to take a lot more than that to get you comfortable in understanding how these things act and react with the winds. One of the things that, as yourself, you've been cleaning for a long time now. And when you look at getting up in a lift and you're cleaning a building in a lift, I can tell you, as I'm spraying this area here, I can tell the wind shift in that basket that I'm in, and I can see how it's coming around the side of that building. I know how I'm going to react to that. And that drone, as it gets over there, even though they've got a lot of these features built in, it's not just about the drone, it's also about the spray that's going in there. So all of these things need to be part of that training package. That's kind of where the Spray Wash Academy is going with it.
Correct. Yeah, it's all part of a whole.
So what would you say would be a good, realistic, because there's no way to say, 200 hours is a good time frame, but a minimum number of takeoffs, minimum number of landings, minimum number of flight hours to feel confident in flight?
If I had to put an actual number on it, you're gonna get a good feel for what you have, how a drone handles in 10 to 20 hours of flight time. But again, like you're not passing a skills test.
Right.
Taking off, landing, those are the easy parts. Learning how to deal with wind shear. Let's say you take on a project cleaning a water tower. Nobody really understands how wind and turbulence works on that stuff. Mm-hmm. Some people are private pilots or they have paragliding experience, and things like that, you kind of understand wind shear and thermals and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
What I think would be a good recommendation for people to do is to go into a less busy area of a town and find a big building just to fly your drone around, even if it's just a small drone, just to fly it around to see what happens.
One of the things that we looked at in everything being in the developmental stages of it there is that, for trainings, actually trying to line up a building to go out and whether it's clean for free or whatever it is, but that gets those pilots, some really good experience. Because if you're flying on a 1-story, 2-story building, just as a trainer, as a learner, it's a good thing to do. And it's a good thing to get that, the understanding the controls and, even taking it straight up in the air, 150, 200 feet, right? You're just going straight up, but, understanding how the visual and how those things happen, I think that's a really good thing. But at the end of the day, again, a building can hide winds so easily, and you move over a little, and then the wind shear can change in a heartbeat, kind of a thing. So knowing that's one of the advantages, I think, if you've already been out washing and you've already been washing with lifts or you've already been in cranes, I think my crane experience probably has the better understanding of how the drones will react, because as you're trying to do something in a crane basket, it moves differently than a basket of, say, or even on a bosun's chair, right? That's going to move differently than if you're in a basket, kind of a thing. So on the Windows side of it, you're cleaning a lot of windows. Are you feeling like the customers are happy with how the windows are coming out, or how does that kind of flow with you guys?
I have had experiences both ways where I've had a customer that was absolutely ecstatic about the outcome of the windows, and I literally said, well, I didn't tell them that, but I thought about it to myself. I'm like, they really didn't turn out that good, but I was transparent with them. That's one of the biggest things, is you have to be transparent with these people about what the expectations are. And
they're not going to come super clean.
No, I've had them come pretty close, but I've learned what things to add to my systems to make the windows come out much better.
Mm-hmm.
I have an experience with window cleaning in the past, with water-fed poles and hand cleaning, and what I'm seeing in the industry is that people are offering construction cleaning with a drone, not realizing that they're not getting them clean. Construction cleaning is something that they have to do up front to get everything off those windows. Once they're construction cleaned, I have a lot of confidence in making the windows come, what I would say, 98% clean. Utilizing the water you're utilizing is a big thing. My experience also lies in different cities in the Midwest, and the quality of water that you're using in each city has a huge impact on it as well.
Right. All your TDS levels, your total dissolved solids, are really going to mean something. And so, do you mostly use RO or RODI? What do you normally do there? And do you use a window soap?
Yes, I use window cleaning solutions. I will use the Lucid Clear. That stuff works great. It really does. But one of the issues I have here, being around a lot of lakes, rivers, we have a lot of spider webs and cobwebs.
Right.
Lucid Clear works very well on that, but I really want to get that stuff off. So it's another upsell that I do, is to really get them clean. I'll spray SH on that stuff with some degreaser to really get that stuff clean.
Right. And then come back and do a window. Yeah.
Yes, correct. It's really, it's all a case by case basis, but it's a lot of being transparent with the customers.
Right. You have to be open and honest.
Yeah. They have to understand what the expectations are. I've had a lot, and I've had people just absolutely ecstatic about how they've turned out. And I was actually surprised how well some of them turned out. But I even had a recent one where I experienced the project was cleaning the windows, and it was I'm sorry, I charged accordingly based on the idea and understanding that these windows were cleaned prior. And what had actually turned out to be partially true, the ground level windows were all construction cleaned. They turned out beautiful. Anything above where you reach from the ground floor was terrible. There was still adhesive left from the plastic. From installing from the glazers. There was caulk all over the windows, and I had to explain to the property manager that whatever you were told was false. These windows were not cleaned properly to begin with, and that's going to affect the outcome of how the drone cleans. So
go ahead.
With that in mind, I mean, I operate in areas that have extremely hard water. So the use of water softeners is a must. Even with my RODI system, that's a huge factor as well. Just get an understanding of the area, the city you're going in to do the work in, and know what to expect with the water. Because that's gonna play a huge factor as well.
Exactly. So what would you say has been the best part of buying the drones, and what would you say has been the worst part of owning the drones?
The best part, honestly, is just the ability to clean things more efficiently, faster, and more economically friendly for the customers, ultimately. The worst part has been the learning curve on how these things work, working through the glitches that each drone may have, connection issues, anything like that, battery issues, just learning like those little nuances.
So you mentioned efficiency, and that's probably another one of those super big questions, right? And I don't feel like you get answers from out there where there's just numbers thrown around and about. Okay, and for me, those numbers don't mean much to begin with, because I can say that I can do 8,000 square feet a minute. Okay, I can say that. Does it mean I can actually do it? No. Does it mean that my equipment can do it, right? Not meaning of the drone, because the drone can move back and forth very quickly. So when you're looking at efficiency and time and all this sort of thing, you have to look first at the ground equipment, because that's ultimately what's going to do it. If you're using a 12-volt pump and you're 50 feet up, you're not going to be very efficient with that. Okay. So keeping that in mind, what system do you operate with? Like, do you run a pressure washer, a booster pump, P4? What system do you operate with?
I have a P40 pump, but I switched over to utilizing. I use the P40 pump generally for chemical applications, but recently I switched over to using a high pro pump. I just be sure to flush it out very well, but that one handles a lot more head pressure. So, and I'm able to run 2 drones off of 1 line. So that's allowed me to work a little bit more efficiently in that manner. Again, when I say efficiently, it all depends on the context. Efficiently could mean less people to do a project for me. It could mean getting it done faster. Yes. But the P40 is for chemical usage, and then the Hypro D30 is what I use for applications of window cleaning solutions and rinsing. I can just manage to get a little bit more pressure out of that.
So when you're talking about that, are you actually flying 2 drones at the same time with 2 different pilots? And one is applying the window solution, and the other one is coming back to do the rinse and following each other down, kind of thing.
Correct. Yes, that's I've been able to manage that project very well with the D30 pump from Hypro. It's worked very well.
I think that's going to be, and this is one of those things where I don't think a lot of people put the thought into, the window cleaning aspect of it, right? If you are, and let's just even argue 60 to 80 feet, right? You're not that high up, but you're high up, right? And so you go and your drone flies for however long it flies for, but you apply that window solution. Now you come down and do a swap or what, that stuff is going to dry. You have to have a way to swap between your solution and your RODI water so that you can rinse and not allow it to dry. And you're not the only one that I've heard flying 2 drones up, one to apply and one to rinse, kind of thing. And that's a good way to go. So back on the efficiency side, would you say, and if you can at all define any sort of numbers between I'm going to say a fairly easy building with a lift, okay, that, how ambiguous that's, who knows where we're going there. But if you had a fairly decent sized building that you were going to do with a lift, but instead you came in with a drone, what do you see on the efficiency side between the two?
Well, it depends on, it depends on a couple other factors, but you play into that. But if we're talking across the board, I am fairly certain that with 2 drones, I can get that done way faster than I could with a lift. Mm-hmm. I've done that recently down in Madison, Wisconsin, where we cleaned. We've been cleaning a lot of clinics, mm-hmm. And quite honestly, we've just had a hard time this year getting lifts. Mm-hmm. And I work with some window cleaning companies. I'll subcontract through for a couple of them, and they're impressed. They're actually impressed as to how quick it works. Mm-hmm.
So when you're saying that with 2 drones, though, are you specifically referring to window cleaning?
No. If I'm spraying SH on let's say a giant concrete building or a big roof project, mm-hmm. I'm very confident that I would have no issue flying 2 drones off of 1 pump, mm-hmm. And being able to make that more efficient. Really what it comes down to is in this general area, the reason that I've started dabbling in that is we get especially towards this time of the year, we actually start getting low temperatures where SH doesn't want to work very well. And then we also have to contend with wind. Mm-hmm. So we scheduled a project to be done. We scheduled 7 days for this project to get done. And out of that 7 days, we had maybe 5 days we could fly. And we had very limited windows of when we could actually fly because of the temperatures and the wind speeds. Mm-hmm. So we had to work as efficiently as possible. So being able to fly in about 4 to 5 hours a day in our 5 days that we had available was what we had to contend with, and we made it happen. So it was a learning experience that way. But yeah,
go
ahead. I think just utilizing 2 drones, it's a lot to manage, and it's not something I would recommend anybody to do unless they had an experienced pilot there to kind of help
Get
organize
your
and
feet wet
oversee
with
it.
one before, and then, make sure your pilots are good, and then move on to the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing is not only going back to that, what we said earlier, don't be afraid to walk away from a job.
Yeah.
But if you do choose to get into this industry, do not hesitate to ask for help.
Yeah.
From other pilots. I suffered a major injury this year, and it forced me to reach out and get more help than I normally would have asked for. And then, it was also a time factor, seasons changing and things like that. There's a lot of factors that played into getting other help, but, collaborating with these other people that have the experience is very important. Because you're not gonna learn everything in one season.
And we preach that all the time at the Spray Wash. We say, you should be making friends with your enemies, so to speak. You're not competitors. You're actually, if you view your competitors more as partners, then you're going to be helping each other out, and you're going to find out how quickly you're not competitors, especially in this. I mean, this thing is so big. The world is so big, and there's so much work out there. And I think that, if you build those relationships, it's going to be so much better for you than to just view everybody as competitors. That's something we talk about all the time, kind of a thing. So let's do this. Brandon, I appreciate your time here today. We're going to have another segment for y'all here with Brandon. Great conversation. We're going to talk about some other things. But for this time here right now, we're going to call it good, and we'll see you guys on the next round, next conversation with Brandon.